Hello, I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. So if I were a good vlogger, I would have filmed this intro clip this morning when I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, the makeup was fresh, the hair was doing like normal things, except I left to catch a train at 7:15 this morning, so that wasn't gonna happen. So I'm here now at like 7:15 p.m. or whatever time it is, and we're just gonna embrace the fact that I kinda look like a lion. It's fine. We're just gonna pretend it's a look, okay? But anyway, I ended up having to go downtown, aka New York City, because I had a couple doctor's appointments, and I decided to kind of make a day of it and treat myself because one of those appointments was going to get a cavity filled, and I hate the dentist, even though I love my dentist. She's a rock star and I didn't feel a thing, but I decided treat yourself. And so that meant I kind of decided to go on like a independent bookstore crawl. So I ended up going to McNally Jackson, which is down by Prince Street, and then I also went to the Strand, which is by Union Square, and I told myself going into this that I was going to buy one, maybe two books tops at each location. That did not go according to plan. I went a little ham. I had zero self-control. I couldn't stop picking up books and putting them into my cart, and I wanted to show you a little bit of that experience. So we're gonna show you my attempt at vlogging in public, which is super awkward. Mind you, I don't know how anyone does it. I felt really cute about doing it. And then we're gonna come back and I'm going to show you my obscene book haul because, to be quite honest, I'm a little embarrassed by just how crazy, how ridiculous, how just, oh boy. Yeah, we're just gonna show you the damage that I did to my wallet momentarily. But why don't we roll the footage? So I have no idea how that turned out. Hopefully it wasn't a complete shit show. We're crossing our fingers and our toes that it was okay and that you had a good time. But now time for the book haul. And as I said, I am somewhat ashamed by how little restraint I displayed today. Like, it was bad. So we're gonna start off with the books that I ended up getting from McNally Jackson, which is a lovely, lovely store. I feel like it's a little bit out of the way, which is why I don't go to it all that often, but I do have to say that I think it might be my favorite bookstore in New York City. Like, I've been to quite a few at this point in my life, but I do think that they have some amazing books there. Like, I was salivating over their selection of like international books from these different regions and translations, and it just made me so giddy. So you'll actually see that quite a few of the books that I bought are translations, which I really, really like. And they're books that I haven't really seen anywhere before, which is also a thing that I really like about independent bookstores. You kind of get these really unique titles and things. So, the first book that I'm going to talk about is actually not a translation. It's Tante Eva by Paula Bomer, and this is, I think, one of the few hardcovers that I bought today because I was well aware that I was hoofing it everywhere, so I was going to need to carry this, and paperback was just the way to go, and my back and shoulder thank me for that, let me tell you. But this book was really interesting to me because it's set in East Berlin. Is it East Berlin? Yes, it is East Berlin, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, which is a time period that I don't think I've read that much about in fiction, so that was a draw to me. It's also more recent historical fiction than I normally read, and so Eva is living in Berlin and is kind of drinking a lot, taking sleeping pills, kind of pursuing this life of happiness and pleasure, and her niece comes to stay with her, and apparently the niece's own like drug addiction sort of comes to the forefront of this, and it seems to be a book that is going to be exploring what life is during this time period and also the relationship between these two women, and I'm just kind of here for it. It just sounded really interesting, different from other historical fiction that I have read. So I was excited about that. Plus the cover to me is just really striking. Like, this is just beautiful. But as I've said in other videos, I'm kind of a sucker for slapping like a piece of art on a cover and calling it a day. Like, I like that. I'm very basic that way. But yeah, so this is one of the books. The next book is Voices in the Evening by Natalia Ginzburg, and this is one of the translations. It's actually translated from Italian, and it's about a little village in Italy, so it's very provincial, and it's set in the aftermath of World War II. So this little community, this like cluster of neighbors, are basically trying to find the new normal, to kind of figure out what the world they're living in now, today, is like, and what that means for them and their dreams and their relationships and everything, because obviously they had been living under a fascist dictatorship. So it's like, what happens now sort of moment, and I was drawn to it because I do like World War II historical fiction, but I'm always looking for fiction from that time period that feels unique and different, and this certainly fit the bill. Next up, we have The Necklace and Other Stories by Guy de Maupassant. Not gonna lie, this cover intrigued me. It was shiny. Like, there's literally I don't know if it's a sapphire or a blue diamond, but my love for jewelry came out when I saw this cover. But I also liked the fact that this is a translation that was done by the same translator who did Irene Nemirovsky's Sweet Frances, which I really, really adored the story, and I thought the translation was very smooth, and sometimes translations can be a little bit clumsy. It felt very natural, so I was drawn to that about it as well. I don't think I've ever read anything by Guy de Maupassant, but it's a name that I know. I believe that he was a protege of Flaubert, and I have read Madame Bovary, but this just seemed really interesting as far as a translation goes. It's a short story collection, which is also something that I don't read all that often, but I was very much attracted to it. And as I said, the cover with a necklace on it, like, hello. The next book is one that I literally picked up as I was walking to the register. Like, I spotted it, I paused for a moment, I tried to talk myself out of it. No, Brittany, you have plenty of books. Turned back to the register, and then it was like something came over me and suddenly the book is in my stack and I'm at the register paying for it. So it just happened. Like, that's all I gotta say. But it is called Bird Summons by Leila Abu Leila. I didn't do research on the names before filming this, so that's probably wrong. But this intrigued me because it's about the relationship of three women. They're Muslim women who decide to go on a trip to the Scottish Highlands, and these three individuals all kind of want more out of life than what they have, and so it seems like it's going to be a bit of like a soul-searching expedition. But I think the bird summons thing is actually about them coming into contact with, I think, like this legendary or mythical bird that's both in Celtic lore and potentially in Muslim lore as well. I think, yes, it's a sacred bird that is in both the Celtic and the Muslim cultures or religions, or however you describe them. And so it seems like it's going to be this real quest for understanding what they should do with their life. And those stories are always just really inspiring and interesting and gut-wrenching. And so, yeah, I was just like, okay, into the cart you go. I don't regret it. And the last book from McNally Jackson is Garden by the Sea by Merce Rodoreda. And interestingly, this is actually a book that's translated from Catalan, which I don't think I've ever read anything translated from Catalan before. Catalan is spoken kind of in a very specific region of Spain around Barcelona. But this book had a really stunning, simplistic cover. It's set in the 1920s, and it's about like this group of friends in this like really ritzy villa over the course of the summer, living kind of a glamorous life. And it's told, I think, the narrator or from the perspective of their gardener, who is kind of watching everything slowly deteriorate over the course of, like, I think 5 or 6 summers. So there's something about it that kind of screams like Great Gatsby vibes, but in Spain, which seems like it could be a load of fun. And as I said, I did like the fact that this was a voice from Catalonia, and so that kind of won me over as well. So yeah, friends, that was only from McNally Jackson. Then I went on to the Strand, and things got even worse because the Strand has used books, and it's very easy to throw a lot of books into your cart when they are $6, $7, $8 compared to what their full retail price is. And I did that more than once and ended up leaving with this big guy here. So we're going to talk about the books because that's interesting. So the first book is not one of the used editions. It's a new one, and it's called The Incredible Nellie Bly, journalist, investigator, feminist, and philanthropist. And it is by Luciana Simonino, Sergio Alguazino, introduction by David Randall. And this I actually got because it was a graphic biography. I have not had much success with graphic novels. Like, for whatever reason, I don't tend to connect with them all that well, but I've read a few graphic biographies, so graphic, like, non-fictions, and really enjoyed them for the most part. So I figured, why not give it a shot? This one really stuck out to me because it's about Nellie Bly, and feminism is always gonna, it's gonna ring my bell. What can I say? But the actual illustrations and everything in it are very colorful and vibrant, and that was also really interesting to me because I think one of the ones I read was kind of like a monochrome or duotone, and the other one didn't have a ton of color in it either. So this is a very different style of illustration than the ones that I've enjoyed, but I did think it was really interesting, and I saw it on the table and was just like, sure, why not? I'm kind of going whole hog here anyway. But yeah, this just seemed really interesting, and I didn't have any graphic novels in my collection that I haven't, or graphic biographies in my collection that I hadn't read yet. So, we got that one. Next up is one of the used editions that I bought from the Strand, and this is The Fires of Autumn by Irene Nemirovsky. Now, as it says on the cover, best-selling author of Sweet Frances. I read that book last year, absolutely adored it, thought it was amazing, was blown away, like, couldn't believe that that was technically a first draft and an unfinished draft of that. So I wanted to try some of her other books because she had written quite a few really successful novels before Sweet Frances, which I believe was her last one before she ended up being sent to a concentration camp and dying there, unfortunately. But this cover was super, super stunning, and it seems to be about the interwar years primarily. So the main character had been in the trenches in World War I, comes back, changed by the experience, begins building his life in some way, shape, or form, and then 10 years later, everyone's on the brink of war again, and so what does that mean for him? And I've been drawn to more interwar historical fiction recently, just because I think it's a really fascinating time, and since I had such a good time with Irene Nemirovsky before, I kind of rely on her. So yeah, I mean, I'm calling this historical fiction, but this would probably have been more contemporary to what Irene Nemirovsky was actually experiencing. I think she wrote this not long after she had fled Paris and only a few short years before her death. So this experience would have been kind of fresh in her mind, and I really enjoy her insights into what's going on psychologically and just like emotionally within people and communities and that sort of thing. So, looking forward to reading this. The next book is Daphne du Maurier's The Scapegoat. Now, this was one of the titles or the authors that I kind of went to the Strand having in mind. Like, I went there and I was like, let's see if I can find another Daphne du Maurier novel, because she's in contention to become like a favorite author of mine. I kind of have this rule that I don't like to consider someone a favorite author until I've read like 2 to 3 of their books. I've read 2 of them so far by Daphne du Maurier. Really, really love them. They were like 4 to 5 star ratings. And this is one of her lesser known works. I was actually looking for like the French something or the other, but they didn't have it in stock. But this one seems like it's gonna be fun. So it's about these 2 men, an Englishman and a Frenchman, and one of them steals the identity of the other. So it's about like what's going on with this person who's stolen the identity and like juggling this like new life that he's taken on to himself, and then the other character whose identity has been stolen. There's something about it that feels like it would be like a really great movie. Like, I feel like I've seen these like stolen identity like suspense, thriller, like action things before, and they're always just a load of fun. So it feels a little bit different from the other Daphne du Maurier novels that I've read, which have been more like historical settings. But yeah, this just sounded like a lot of fun. I also thought the cover was pretty. Like, it's minimalist, and I respect that. The next book I picked up, even though it's like a movie tie-in cover, but I happen to really like the actress, so I was like, fine. I've also seen the movie, thought it was very cute and entertaining. It's called Their Finest by Lisa Evans, and that's Gemma Arterton, is that how you pronounce her name, on the cover. And it's this story that's set during World War II, but it's about this copywriter who ends up like having to create propaganda, like heartwarming propaganda to help people's morale during the war, I believe, from what I remember from the movie. And it just seemed like it was going to be like a cute, kind of fluffy historical fiction in a World War II setting. I think the fact that Jojo Moyes, who wrote Me Before You, is one of the authors that like blurbed it, kind of tells you where this book might end up going. Like, I do think it's going to be very heartwarming, and I feel like there must be a romance element in here as well, but it just seemed cute. I hadn't seen anyone talk about it. I'm a sucker for World War II historical fiction, so I was like, yes, why not? It was also $8, so it's fine. Like I said, I went for it. The next one is The Bonefire by Grigory Dragoman, and this is translated from Hungarian, and so this is partly an experiment because Magda Szabo, who is another author that is kind of in contention to become a favorite of mine, is Hungarian, and her works are translated from Hungarian, so I'm trying to see if there's something like innate about the way that Hungarian like stories are told that I am just drawn to. Admittedly, like, this is written decades after Magda Szabo, so things could have changed, but I was curious, and also the fact that the author was born in Transylvania. I was like, really now? I don't know that I've ever read anything by anyone from Transylvania, so that was certainly a draw. The cover on this thing, too, is just, like, gorgeous. But there were a lot of other things that kind of made me pick this book up. So it's described as political gothic. Now, I love a good gothic novel in general, but I've never heard anything described as political gothic, so my ears perked up. I was intrigued, needed to learn more. It's also set in Eastern Europe during a revolution. The main character seems to be like 13 or 14, so kind of YA age group, and she ends up being taken in by her grandmother, who seems to be kind of into some like witchy things, but there seem to be reasons why people are like suspicious of her beyond that as well. So there's a lot going on here. Loving the gothic vibes, loving the cover, loving the fact that it's a translation. Like, it really just ticked all the boxes, and so I was like, yes. This was, again, a book that I picked up, like, on my way to buy the other books. Like, this was not planned. I just happened to see this gorgeous cover on a table, like, literally across from the end of the line where I needed to go, and was like, hello, friend. And the rest is history. And then I think this is the last book. Yes, it is. Okay, thank goodness. And so this one just also screamed Brittany. It is The Shadow Queen by Anne O'Brien, who seems to have a lot of historical fiction books out there, but I have never heard of her. And based on the cover, I actually thought this would have been a little bit of an older title, but it's from like 2017 or 2018, which surprised me, but like, that's fine. But literally the back cover here says, a dangerous word perhaps for a woman, power, and I was just like, sold to the woman with an armful of books. meaning me, because that just sounded awesome. And so it's about Joan of Kent, I believe, who is, I want to say, the mother of Richard II, potentially. So it's a story about her. I don't know much about her life. I only know a little bit about Richard II. So this is a time period in like British history that is new to me on a lot of levels. But I love a good historical fiction about a badass woman in history who I haven't heard of before. And so this kind of does that, I think. I'll be interested to see how I get on with Anne O'Brien's writing, because, as I said, she does have quite a few other titles that seem to all be on women, and I think, like, women in the nobility or even in the monarchy, potentially. So possibly someone whose writing I might be interested in looking into in the future. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, this just spoke to me. I'm into it. So those are the books, and I didn't count them before, so let's do a count on camera. So we got a 1, we got a 2, 3, 11. So guys, this is my damage. This was me supposed to be having control, self-control. This did not go to plan, but they all sound really interesting, right? I'm kind of impressed with the selection of books here. Yeah, that's where we are. So yeah, that's the end. I hope you enjoyed this vlog / haul, and if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!